So let's talk for a second about basic aerodynamics. So I like to point out that this is not the movies. Lots of things happen in the movies, and I think sometimes people are afraid to fly because of things that happen in the movies. And you can see the example on the upper right. I don't know if anyone saw snakes on the plane or not, but that was, boy, they really stretch it when they start doing stuff like that. But, you know, in the center at the bottom, everyone probably by now has seen Airplane, the classic airplane movie, and the autopilot. But airplanes just flat do not fall out of the sky. And many don't realize that even jet aircraft have about a 17-to-1 glide ratio. So every mile in altitude, you can actually glide for a mile forward, even though you've lost engine. So the airplanes don't drop like rocks. Modern aircraft are well built and maintained. Crews are well trained and certified. We talked about that a few minutes ago. The FAA has recently issued new limits for flight duty periods. I think you've been keeping an eye on that. Navigation aids are been developed and getting better. And then major programs have been put in place over the last few years. They're doing more safety audits by outside firms. For a number of years now, we've had this traffic collision and avoidance systems that automatically tell you when you're in the vicinity of aircraft, and actually have algorithms so that the aircraft will avoid each other. So it's quite phenomenal. Runway incursions. One of the problems you have to watch is, especially in fall conditions, that you don't go taxi onto an active runway. Controlled flight in terrain. They made a lot of progress in that regard. And then, of course, increased security. And sometimes we don't like that, but obviously it's for our own protection in many respects. So what are the basic forces acting on an aircraft? Obviously, lift is what gives you ability to fly, counteracting gravity. And then you have thrust counteracting the drag. And, of course, the engine are providing the thrust. So that's just basic aerodynamics. And we'll cover a few more things in just a second. So how do you create lift? This is a very, very simple equation, or example of a diagram, but you can see that it's a simple product of difference in pressure. So that you have what's called camber, or more curvature to the upper part of the wing. And so you have reduced pressure on top because the air is having to go faster. And so the pressure, higher pressure at the bottom, actually gives you a differential lift. Now, obviously, there's things that fly and don't fly well. If you ever tried to throw things in the air, some things work better than others. So we have what we call drag, and parasite drag is three different forms. One is called form drag, one is called interference drag, and another type is skin friction. And you can see an example in the diagram of various types of drag. Just putting a flat plate out there like you would holding your hand out of a car window. If you put it flat out there, it's going to slap your hand back. If you turn it sideways, of course, it's less resistance. So you can see the various turbulence caused by the round, heavier objects versus a airfoil-looking device. Which aircraft here do you think has less drag, or at least parasite drag? The T-38 or this cargo carrying aircraft? Obviously, it's the T-38. I flew those in the Air Force, by the way. So what about this thing called induced drag? Unfortunately, there's never anything free. There's no free lunch. And so anytime you're developing lift, you've got a component of drag that's being formed called induced drag. And it occurs whenever a moving object is directing airflow at it. And it occurs, as I said, because of the airflow of the wings. And if you look at this diagram, you can see as you increase your angle of attack, or the position of the airflow versus the position of the wing, then you're going to get more induced drag. So basically, the higher you raise your nose at any one particular moment, you can induce more drag. So let's talk about lift and aircraft stall. You can see on the diagram on the left, as you increase your attitude more, you're more pull back on the controls or increase the wing airfoil relative to the wind, you can actually get separated airfoil, and that's what's called stall. In high-speed flight, you're going to get shock wave that forms on the wing at high speeds, and then you get some turbulence that's going to cause some issues. That's why, for instance, on that 238 you saw, that's why the wings are very sharp, very small in camber. So what do the airplanes do about it? They install what's called slats and slots on the aircraft wings so that they can forestall some of these or keep from happening some of these separation, if you will. And you see those examples of how the airflow is protected by using the slats and slots on the wings. And there's an example. You can see them on the back of the aircraft. So what about winglets? This is a little picture, I hope you can see it, of a Dreamliner, a 787 Dreamliner, and you see the end of the wings. They've done a lot of research on perfecting the wings so that there's less drag, because at some point you're going to have drag based upon the fact that just the wing stops. It's going to create turbulence over the wing and cause additional drag, and so they try to counteract that. Here's another example. This is called a blended wingtip, and so that it's part of the wing, and actually those winglets develop a small percentage of lift as well, so they're actually projecting you forward. And you know, you might just say that, well, we got this from the birds because the birds perfected this a long time ago.